was probably numb for a solid 6, 7 years. Just holding all that pain and all that heartbreak that I felt, just never knowing how to really express it, because that stigma among men is just, you're shown as weak if you share those emotions with anybody. And that was the mentality my dad always drilled into my head. We don't talk about those things. We don't share our emotions.
We are Gold Ivy.
Our mission is to empower you to own and unleash your truth.
Stories of resiliency are gold, and ivy grows in hard places.
Those hard places are what creates space for light to shine through.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production.
Keeping the flu and common cold out of your household is important whether you're 5, 35, or 95, and we're going to tell you the easiest and most delicious way to do just that. It's with All Things Elderberry, a woman-owned business that has all-natural, vegan-friendly, and gluten-free elderberry products.
And when we say products, we mean a variety of delicious and beautiful products, not just for you, but for your entire household to get an immunity boost. If we had to pick our favorite product, I'm going with organic elderberry gummies. My kids are obsessed. We're trying to avoid sickness from school and make sure they can participate in their sports, so they take one every morning before they brush their teeth. They think the gummies taste like a mix of grape and cotton candy. I tried them too, and I can see why they ask for them every day. I love that they're boosting their immune system at the start of their day.
My favorite All Things Elderberry product is the elderberry green tea paired with the elderberry honey. The green tea gives me a midday boost, and the honey gives the tea extra sweetness. I also put the honey in my morning coffee instead of creamer. So good. All Things Elderberry is my solution for staying healthy before traveling, avoiding frequent colds and sinus infections, really just maintaining my health all year round.
What sets this brand apart from the others is there are no artificial additives in All Things Elderberry. Their elixir is made with organic, Missouri-grown elderberries, raw honey, and whole spices.
Elderberries not only help with immune support, but may also slow the aging process with their powerful antioxidants, improve skin health, and can shorten the duration of severity of colds and flu.
Visit allthingselderberry.com to explore their full range of immune-supporting products. Stay healthy and feel your best naturally. Use our code GOLDIVY at checkout for 15% off your first order. That's code GOLDIVY at checkout for 15% off your first order.
We're coming at you with important information, warnings, and a solution. Sharing health and wellness gold with you is what we do. And so when we learned alarming information about devices that we routinely use, and we know you do too, we have to share it with you.
What most people don't realize is that the electronic devices we're using, cell phones, Wi-Fi, laptops, and Bluetooth, emit electromagnetic fields, or EMFs. The devices we're holding by our brains, on our skin, by our reproductive parts are emitting EMFs, and prolonged exposure to EMF radiation has been associated with potential health concerns, including neurological effects, impacts on reproductive health, and sleep disturbances.
Those studies alone are a cause for pause. But also, the International Agency for Research on Cancer that operates under the World Health Organization has classified non-ionizing EMFs produced by electronic products like cell phones, smart devices, and tablets a possible human carcinogen. Yikes.
And our solution? SafeSleeve. SafeSleeve anti-radiation products are designed to give you peace of mind of knowing you and your devices are protected while making your devices even easier to use. All of their anti-radiation products incorporate their lab-tested shielding technology that can block over 99% of RF and 92% of ELF radiation. And that's important because the vast majority of products that claim to block EMF radiation either don't have any testing at all, or they only block a small portion of the harmful frequencies.
We absolutely love the sleek look of these stylish products. They come in a variety of styles and colors. For our phone cases, I picked black, Andrea picked tan, and they include a built-in wallet with RFID protection and a magnetically detachable inner case. They're also anti-radiation products for tablets, iPad, and laptops.
We are pumped because we have been looking for a brand to help protect ourselves and our loved ones from this radiation for months. My kiddos have the iPad cases. Searching for a brand with stylish phone cases, colorful iPad colors, and functional headphones for our workouts. so that we can enjoy our devices, but also not have to worry about how they're harming us.
And without a doubt, it's time to protect ourselves. Grab your Safe Sleep phone case today and any of their other groundbreaking products at safesleevecases.com and use our code GOLDIVY for 15% off.
And now to this episode of the Ivy Unleashed podcast. Welcome back to the Ivy Unleashed podcast. We are so happy to be talking again about mental health today. May is such a special month for us, our listeners, our guests, and we like to have really important people on with a very clear message, with a mission. And May, this year just feels really special. And we want to introduce, first of all, our guest, Chris Milson. Welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, we're so happy to have Chris here because he has a story, which is always like the best episodes when people are vulnerable and they share something they went through, and it really gives people tools, ideas, compassion for people for what they've gone through. So Chris is the podcast host of Voice for the Voiceless. And today we're going to be talking about some heavy stuff, but very important stuff, and not something I think people should shy away from. However, if you do have little ears listening,
or you're just not in the right headspace,
we will be talking about suicide prevention today and all that encompasses, both personal stories. We'll be talking about addiction today, some things that, you might not be in the right spot today, or have little ears in the car or whatever. So just want to give that little warning before we dive in. And Chris, what you're doing in life is so beautiful. And we have a mutual friend, shout out to Shelby. And Chris approached us to say he was ready to share his story and that he's using it to really help people. And so we would love for you to kind of talk about your mental health journey and how you decided to create Voice for the Voiceless.
So it's hard to pinpoint where exactly it started. I always lead it back to, maybe when I was about 4 years old, because I, for some reason, can remember that far back. My parents went through a pretty nasty divorce at 8 years old. And prior to that, there was just a lot of fighting. There was, my mom was unfaithful to my dad. And one of the earliest memories I have is leading my dad to a guy's house that my mom was staying with. I remember it like it was yesterday. And what's crazy is I remember the detail of the car. My dad is still friends with a guy to this day because it was one of his best friends. And he apologizes to my dad every day they talk. And it's pretty surreal that anytime I talk to my dad about it, it's just kind of like he brushes it off because he came from that generation of just brush it off, man up, and, it's okay kind of thing. And I didn't grow up being able to share my emotions. I didn't grow up being able to speak out without it being used as a weapon towards me. So, 8 years old, like I said, they got divorced, and it was weird going to two different parents' houses. It was just strange not seeing them together, and I thought it was my fault. And my teacher at the time, I'm still very good friends with her to this day, Teresa Ramsauer, I'll always shout her out. She taught me how to tie my shoes. She was there for me when my parents got divorced, and everything after that, she has always been a heavy supporter of mine. So I'll forever be grateful for that.
She was your teacher?
Yeah, she was my teacher. She was my teacher first and second grade.
Oh, angels. Teachers are angels.
And one of the earliest mental health incidents I remember is 14 years old, was my first attempt. I was in a really lost place. And I, just until recently, I couldn't really put it into a reason why, because, at the time you're not thinking, why am I doing this? You just in that mindset of just wanting to go away, wanting all the pain that you're feeling to disappear. Right. And I kind of chalked it down, and I had a conversation with my therapist about this, about my reason why. And my reason why at 14 years old was I wanted to be seen, wanted to be heard. And the way I was going to do it, the place I was going to do it was at school. So what better way, and I'm not glorifying what I was doing, but what better way to be seen than in front of your whole school, and in such a horrible light. My mindset wasn't, this is the wrong thing to do. I just want to stop feeling the way that I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I got paired up. I got Baker acted, which basically go into a psychiatric patient center. And I got paired up with a gambling therapist. um, so 14 years old, this is about 2006, I believe. You know, mental health resources weren't up to par to what they are now. So I couldn't tell you one helpful lesson that therapist gave me because it was a mismatch. You know, a kid almost takes his life and you pair him up with somebody who specializes in gambling. Like, what? You know, um, I I was abused both physically and mentally a lot from my mom. Probably about till I was 18, 19 years old. She always found stuff to break over my head. You know, she just very violent. Um, and it wasn't until she left me homeless when she moved up to New Jersey that I really started to try and figure things out. Now, I was trying to go to college. I was trying to do a future for me because I thought that's what my family wanted. They wanted me to go to college. And I had to drop out because I didn't have a place to live. So she left to Jersey. I started working at Publix down here and was probably numb for a solid 6, 7 years. Just holding all that pain and all that heartbreak that I felt, just never knowing how to really express it because that stigma among men is just you're shown as weak if you share those emotions with anybody. And that was the mentality my dad always drilled into my head. We don't talk about those things. We don't share our emotions because he was emotionally numb pretty much my entire life. He still pretty much is. He's softening up a little bit, but you know, he's in his 50s now, so it's like I don't know where he's at mentally in life, but he's still that same person that doesn't really have a lot of empathy or compassion.
And was he around when your mom left?
Yeah, he was. He didn't have anywhere for me to sleep. So I had to go live with a friend, and that ended up really bad. It was his friend, and it was my friend and his newly wife. She didn't like the idea, and I had to work and drop out of school because it was either make money or spend money that I don't have. So, a couple years passes by. I'm working in Publix, in about 2017, I tore my shoulder trying to do wrestling school. After I tore my shoulder, I spent 6 weeks in New Jersey with my mom because, you know, her being a narcissistic person manipulated into my mind saying, you know, she'll take care of me, make sure everything's okay. So around the 6th week, when I'm coming back to Florida and I have to start PT to go back to work, she's like, why don't you move up here with me? You don't have to pay any bills and you could save up money. Oh, yeah, that sounds great, even though I've given her chance after chance after chance. So I did. I left Florida, lived up there for a year. And when I tell you that's probably the closest to hell I've ever been, it was pretty bad.
What was that like?
So there was a really bad incident between her and I where she spent 3 hours screaming in my face. I didn't get one word. I just let her go. I just took it because I've always been a punching bag for her. And I never really knew how to fight back without like being as aggressive as her, you know, and that led to my second attempt. 27 years old, it was right before my work shift because I was working overnights, had the means, had the plan. I think I went further than I did when I was 14. And my brother called me and he's like, hey, man, I saw your note. I wrote a suicide note on Facebook. I deleted it within 5 minutes because I didn't want that attention. I didn't want anybody to see that I was hurting that much. And that's the weakest I've ever felt. And he called me after I deleted it. He's like, hey, man, something told me to reach out to you and just let you know that I love you and I care about you and I don't want to see anything happen to you. And moments after that conversation, another friend who is my tattoo artist now, she said that she saw my post word for word before I deleted it. And she's like, you are so worth living in this life, and I want you to be okay. I'm here for you. It's the first time I've ever felt that somebody was being genuine when they said they were here for me. And to this day, I won't let anybody else tattoo me. I won't let anybody touch my skin unless it's by her. She's done my memorial tattoo. She's done every tattoo that I have. 2021, my brother passed away. He was killed by a drunk driver. She never saw justice. Nothing ever happened to her because she refused to blow. And Florida's really weird about drunk drivers down here. I'm not really sure how she never saw jail time. And it was one of the hardest deaths I think I've ever faced because he literally saved my life. Yeah. And when I started the mental health Facebook group, he was one of the biggest supporters. He was always rooting me on. He's like, man, I'm so happy you're telling your story. You're living your truth. You're talking about all those things that your mom did. Because for the longest time, as a whole, as society as a whole, we hear a lot of horror stories about fathers, right? We hear about abusive fathers. We hear about, the fathers that aren't around. And one of the hardest things for me to even start talking about was my mom. You don't hear the conversation of narcissist mom nearly enough. And when I started talking about the things that she did, and when I started therapy down here, one of the first conversations I had with my therapist, she's like, you were abused. And my first thought was like, what do you mean I was abused? Abused is, like being beaten to death. I didn't understand what the word abuse meant. She's like, abuse isn't just physical. Like she did her best to try and destroy you, and that's abuse. And when he passed away, I created the podcast, and he was the motivation to that. He was one of the most powerful voices in my life, and the idea behind the name of it, the idea of creating it, came from his passing, and talking about people who were like me at one point in their life where they couldn't talk, where they couldn't share their story. So that's when I started the podcast. And ever since then, I've had the ability to talk to some of the most wonderful human beings, including yourself. And I appreciate every day that I'm given because I've lost so much, whether it's friendships or whether it's actual, passings in my life, has been really hard and challenging. But I'm here today sharing my story, and I'm really proud of that fact.
Thank you for walking us through that. That cannot be easy by any means, and reliving those things. But it takes you saying something and giving a voice to the voiceless to be that inspiration, that hope, just like your brother was for you, your tattoo artist that called you. Our goal with this podcast is that someone out there is meant to find this, the divine timing, and every episode it happens. And so I know wholeheartedly that will happen with this episode, but it doesn't make it easy. And so I think giving you credit and just pausing and taking that in is so needed.
Thank you.
Yeah, and hearing your story, I understand the voice for the voiceless in so many ways. Just from what you were saying, it sounds like not only you didn't have a voice, but you didn't know how to use your voice. You weren't, like you said, you weren't taught that it was even allowed really to talk about those things. And I don't think that's necessarily like just a male thing too. It sounds like just the way that you were parented as well, that, things were happening that I don't think your parents would want you to tell anybody what was going on. And so I'm curious, as far as like your childhood goes, were you primarily living with your mom then?
Yeah.
The whole time?
She did a really good job at trying to alienate our father away from us. She'd make up stories about him, saying that he beat her, which wasn't true, that he cheated on her, which I don't know how much truth there is on that. Like I said, I witnessed her with another man several times. So it's hard to tell what's true and what's not with her. Um, but yeah, a majority of my childhood, I lived with her.
Yeah. And I can see how that would really feel hopeless, thinking of being 14 and feeling like there's no other option but just to end it. And so I want to dive into that because I know it's really dark. Obviously, it's like the darkest thought possible is wanting to end your life. But we need to normalize that people have these thoughts. People walking around that you see every single day have had these thoughts. Brilliant people, positive people, smiling people, parents, people have these dark feelings and thoughts. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we can have them, but we can't stay in that moment. We can't allow ourselves to get totally in the hole, right? I think it's meant to be that you put it on Facebook. Like, why would you do that if like you didn't want someone to like save you or like, give you some hope? And so I'm curious if you could speak to that person that's, maybe having those thoughts a little bit more than they normally do and kind of what you would say to them to help them kind of get out of there, or your advice for someone that's starting to feel pretty low and pretty hopeless.
I think the best thing to start, is journaling, writing down those thoughts. For me, I was always scared of journaling because it was I kind of attributed it to writing your demons on a page and seeing those demons come to life. It's surreal when you dive into just feeling that way and why you're feeling that way. And like you said, we can't sit in that mindset. And I think sometimes we trap ourselves in that mindset sometimes because it's like, you want things to get better and it's so hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I think the most important thing is to, start talking about it. It doesn't have to be to somebody. Talking is writing, talking is journaling. You can start there. I know the hardest thing to do is talk to your peers about feeling that way because a lot of people who aren't equipped to handle that kind of conversation, their first thought is, man, maybe I should, call this person to get Baker acted or, call a hospital and see if they can help this person. And speaking from experience, that isn't always the answer. Just listen. Having somebody to listen to you is probably one of the most powerful things we can do as humans is listen to one another because we're so quick to respond to everybody, but we're not so quick to understand what people are feeling and how they're feeling. So I think the best advice I can give somebody is start talking to somebody that you actually trust. And if it starts with journaling, journaling is perfectly fine, or put on some music that helps you get through those thoughts. And, if it inspires you to write that way, I mean, music helped me tremendously as a kid.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that because I think those things are free and everybody has access to listening to music, to a piece of paper and a pen. And believe it or not, everybody has someone that cares deeply about you that wants to listen and help you. And I think a big part of that is feeling like a burden, like, oh, this is so heavy. They have their whole life, so much going on in their life. Why would I put this on them, But I would encourage people to think of it the opposite way. That person that you don't want to burden, that would care, would help you. How devastated they would be to know they didn't get an opportunity to help you if you did take your life, and I think that's so hard to have that perspective when you're in that mindset though, where you're in that super dark place and probably your brain chemistry is off too. If you're in a place that you're suicidal, like you probably could use some medication to kind of help get you to that equilibrium, right? And so I'm curious how that played in with you. And like, did you have to lean on medication? Were you open to that? Did you feel like you needed it? Like, what was your relationship with medication?
No, I personally never did anything with medication. Before my first attempt at 14, self-harming was really big in my life. It was something that still to this day I don't feel very proud about. It's really hard to talk about because of just the nature of self-harming is just a tough subject for a lot of people. That was my way of, just not feeling numb, not feeling like I was impervious to pain. It was something that I did to try and disrupt something in my brain. Like you can feel, you can get better, you can heal. Um, looking back at it now, and I've talked to people who are older adults that have self-harmed and still do. And it's like, I understand, I understand why you do it. But there are so many different avenues that you can pass through to get help for yourself. Not everybody needs therapy. Not everybody needs the medication. And I think those two points are really important because, like you said, we feel like it's a burden to talk to people. We feel like it's so much to put onto somebody's back, and like starting with the words "I'm not okay" brings you a long way in a healing journey. It brings you a lot further along than most people who aren't willing to help themselves. Um, with medication, I know my mom tried to get me on Ritalin because, I don't know why this was such a big thing when I was like around 14, but if kids were like too hyper or too happy or whatever it was, Ritalin was like really heavy among the school, and I don't know why. Um, she tried to prescribe me with Ritalin, and I said no, absolutely not. Um, the first time I ever messed with any kind of medication was Percocet for my shoulder, and I hated the feeling. Um, I know that some people do need medication, but I also want to say that even with that medication, sometimes therapy or taking those steps to better yourself too, the medication isn't going to do it all. And a lot of people struggle with that conversation.
Mm-hmm. And you're very open about both of your parents struggling with addiction. Do you think that plays into you not wanting medication?
Absolutely. My mom was really big with drugs growing up, and I remember, I think it was 17, she told us that she was dying from bone cancer. Come to find out that she was addicted to crack. Um, that was a pretty surreal thing to discover because, just finding out that your own mother would lie to you because like, she can't admit to her addiction.
How'd you find out?
Oh, so we were going to NA meetings with her, and she told us that it was for weed. I'm like, okay, like I can understand going to NA for weed, I guess, but you telling us bone cancer and then it really being something else when she admitted to that in the meeting was just kind of like jaw dropping. Like you weren't adult enough to tell, your oldest who was 17, not even so much your younger ones, but at least your oldest you could have been honest with because I thought my mom was dying. And again, just kind of going to her addictive, manipulative personality. With my dad, his was drinking, always drinking. And we went on a cruise this past August. And either the day or maybe just like a week before we were all going, I was at my grandma's house. We were talking about all the stuff that we were going to do on the cruise and everything. And my dad went in his room, he just kind of disappeared. And when I went to go say bye to him, I witnessed him take a bump of coke. And I've never seen somebody do coke before. And when I saw it, my heart dropped. And, being 32 years old, I never thought that it would affect me as much as it did. And I called my brother and I had a full-blown panic attack. I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know to approach him about it. I don't know how to have this conversation. Like I'm just freaking out at this point. And when I called him, he didn't answer. So I called my brother back. I'm like, he's not picking up. Like I don't know what to do. After I got off the phone with my brother, I called him again. And he's like, I know why you were calling. And that's why I didn't pick up the first time. He's like, I've never felt so embarrassed and so awful in my life for still doing that. He's like, a friend gave it to me. I was going to throw it away. And I didn't. And when you saw me do it, he's like, I felt really, really bad about the whole thing. But his addiction was coke and alcohol. And I think that's why I'm scared of medication and just any kind of substance for that matter. I had tried edibles the end of last year to try and sleep because I don't sleep very well. I have really bad anxiety and I just don't sleep. And I had a pipe break in my laundry room right after I took an edible. So you can imagine I had a full blown freak out. Called the cops. Um, and I called my dad and I called maintenance. I said, I don't know what to do. Like, I just not coherent at all. Don't know what's going on. And just see a giant flood of water coming in my house, just freaking out. I will never touch that stuff again.
Who wants to know what I discovered that's an absolute game changer with my hormones, stress level, and quality of my sleep? I am not one to talk about supplements, but after learning all about magnesium, I have to fill you in. In May of last year, I tested my hormones and my doctor explained to me that most women are deficient in magnesium, how important magnesium is, and how the brand of magnesium matters. First, magnesium is involved in hundreds of biochemical reactions in your body. Cortisol regulation, take magnesium. Better sleep, magnesium. Muscle soreness and recovery, magnesium. Combat depression and anxiety, magnesium. The list of magnesium's benefits go well beyond those examples. I asked for the best brand of magnesium and my doctor said hands down, Smidge. She prefers Smidge because it's super clean and made in small batches. No fillers or common allergens and non-GMO. Smidge's magnesium is made with a premium form of magnesium called glycinate complex. After taking the 100 milligram capsule of Smidge Evening Magnesium every night for just a week, I noticed how much better I felt in the morning. Melatonin and other sleep aids can make me groggy or give me weird dreams. Smidge's magnesium has improved my energy levels, reduced my anxiety, and my digestive health has never been better. I do my best to take it every single night to keep reaping all the benefits. I'm telling you, Smidge Magnesium is a game changer. The majority of adult women are deficient in magnesium, and we don't want you to be one of them. To experience the health benefits of Smidge Evening Magnesium as soon as possible, go to getsmidge.com or find the link in the show notes and be sure to use code GOLDIV10 for a 10% discount. That's getsmidge.com and code GOLDIV10 at checkout and let us know how great Smidge Magnesium makes you feel as well.
Hey everyone, Brooke here. One of my biggest goals for 2025 is to improve my energy, and I know I'm not alone in that. I also know I'm not alone in what I'm about to say next. Every morning when I wake up, the first thing I look forward to is my morning cup of coffee. What I don't look forward to is how much I rely on it to get me through the day and the stomach upset and crashes that come with it. I know it's hard on my hormones, energy, and stress levels, but man, is it a hard habit to break. Can anyone else relate? I want quick and easy, and I want energy. Saying goodbye completely to caffeine is out of the question for me, but trying it in a new way, that I'm open to. So let me tell you about my new obsession, Everyday Dose. Would you believe me if I told you my new morning cup of energy includes the following, and all in one simple scoop? We've got L-theanine, an amino acid that works to increase focus, balance insulin levels, metabolism, and lower stress and cortisol. We've got low acidity coffee extract, finally coffee that doesn't give me a stomach ache. Collagen protein to improve my gut health, skin, and nails. Chaga, a type of mushroom that supports immune system. And my favorite, Lion's Mane, a natural nootropic that helps reduce brain fog and boost my mood. In addition to it being the easiest and most effective morning routine, it's free of artificial sweeteners, additives, mycotoxins, and mold. I feel at ease knowing what's going in my body, all while feeling energized, calm, and focused all day. Check out their coffee starter kit. It comes with free gifts every month like a frother, gunmetal spoon, breathwork app, and more. Join Andrew and myself as we start our year and all 365 days with Everyday Dose. Visit everydaydose.com/goldivy and get your coffee starter kit delivered straight to your door. Use our code GOLDIVY to get up to 30% off your first order.
Yeah, medication scares me. I'm not going to lie. Medication just genuinely terrifies me.
Yeah, it makes sense. Not even just from a young age, but this happened last August. Yeah. So your parents and that trauma, you're still dealing with it. What are some of the boundaries you have had to set and still adhere to protect your own mental health right now?
Oh man, boundaries is one of my favorite things to talk about. We weren't ever taught how to put up boundaries for anything. And when I first learned boundaries, it was with my mom. I called her when one of my friends passed away in 2020, and how weird the pandemic was with deaths. You couldn't say bye to your loved ones. And it was a really good friend of mine, and she passed away alone in the hospital, unfortunately. And I called her, and I don't know why I called my mom before anybody else, and I just started crying on the phone to her. And just after that, she took it as, oh well, everything's better now because you called me after one of your friends passed away. And she just doesn't know when to stop when somebody's like, I don't want to talk about this, or can we just not bring this up? So I had a conversation with my therapist about it, and I said, I want everything to get better between her and I. I don't like feeling like this about my mom. It's embarrassing for me to tell people that. Here's another thing I want to throw out there. It's almost embarrassing to tell, other interested people that if I'm trying to date them, like, yeah, I don't have a relationship with my parents. I don't feel great about that, because especially if they're very family oriented. But she had stayed over my house in 2021, which was a really big step for me. She stayed in my living room on a blow-up mattress for a week. And when I tell you that she crossed every boundary humanly possible, it was bad. She wanted to use my car to go pick up some weed from a friend down the road. I told her no. Oh, can they come here and drop it off? Absolutely not. Then there was another incident in that same week where she wanted to adopt one of her friend's baby, because I guess the state was trying to take it away or something. And it wasn't with good intention. It was so she can have somebody else to play puppet master with. Oh. And after that trip, I didn't talk to her for like 2 years, because she tried to get a matching tattoo, one of my mental health tattoos that has the heartbeat and a semicolon on it. She's like, oh, can I get the same tattoo as you? I'm like, no. What? Why would you ask me that question? Like, this tattoo is made for me. Like, I don't get your own tattoo. And, maybe I could have said a little bit nicer to her, but yeah, she just was calling me her mental health advocate and everything else. It was really, really weird and uncomfortable. And after that trip, I was just like, I don't think I ever want to see her after that. I haven't seen her in like 2 years, maybe. Yeah, about 2.5 years I haven't seen her. She recently got married, and she basically tried to gaslight me into walking her down the aisle since her father's no longer here. And she's like, oh, well, if you won't, then I'll just get, I don't remember what she said, get somebody else to walk down with her or something like that. And it was just kind of like, so you're going to try and make me feel bad after the relationship we don't have. Mm-hmm. Like, I told her no. I said, I can't do this because it's just not something that my heart is willing to open up to you. So I keep her at a very, very long arm's distance with her. With my dad, it's just kind of like, I know what to talk about and what not to, because he doesn't ask me how I am. He doesn't ask me how therapy's going. It's always calling to vent about one of my other siblings, not about me. And for the longest time, I tried chasing his validity. I always wanted to hear the words, I'm proud of you. Never once have I heard those words from him. And I think the last time that I tried chasing for it, I don't know why I did this. I went on my brother's Facebook when he got a place, and my dad said those words to him, and I was crushed. I don't understand why, being the eldest, I get treated the shittiest. Pardon my language. But boundaries with him, I know what not to talk about. I don't talk about my life to him because he doesn't care to ask. And that was an internal boundary that I struggled with for so long, just telling him about anything.
Yeah. Wow, Chris, I'm like feeling this so deeply that if people are listening to you and they're not watching you, that they don't know what your shirt says, but it says, you are enough. And I know that everybody that's listening to this is so proud of you. And what's so hard is, like, biologically, we need our parents to be proud of us. We want that no matter what mistakes they've made, no matter if they have a completely different lifestyle than us. We're set up to want that and crave that. And I know that you share that so much with other people that they are enough, and that's why you're wearing that shirt. But I am so proud of you for the person that you are, for all that you've been through. I feel like your entire life will be unpacking what you've been through, unfortunately. And I'm so sad for your childhood. Like, I just want to hug that little boy. I feel so bad for him. And I just can't believe you're the man that you are sitting here. Like, I'm so proud of you. I hardly know you, but the fact that you are taking what you've been through and you're transforming it into something to help other people is so beautiful. And I hope you continue to set boundaries and feel no guilt. And I know that's really hard when it's your parent to set a boundary, because you want them to be a part of your life. You want them to get better. You want it to be, but sometimes it's just not in the cards. And sometimes it's for your own safety and for your future relationships that you're going to have, that like your own mental health has to come first.
Absolutely. The hardest thing for me to swallow was accepting that neither of my parents were ever going to change. And I think that's one of the most hurtful realities I've ever had to face. I appreciate you so much for those kind words, because I hear it every now and again, but I don't hear it enough. I think that's the hardest part for me, is just putting so much into this and sharing my story and being able to talk to people like yourselves. It's really hard to hear those words, because I don't hear it nearly enough, because I struggle with imposter syndrome so much. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And hearing those words from you, I thank you so much.
Yeah, and I mean, your whole life you've been told that you weren't, right? And even into your adulthood, someone screaming in your face for 3 hours, like, you've had a very extreme version of you are not enough, okay? And you will never be enough, I'm sure. And all of the things, I don't know what came out of her mouth, but I think it's going to be like, that's going to be your work, is to believe that you are, right? And showing yourself just as you are, not having to do voice for the voiceless to be enough, just you as you are. And I think, your parents did not set you up for that, to believe that. And so I hope you continue to put people in your path that help you, but that eventually it becomes internal, right? Where you do believe that, because it's a tricky thing. Like, we can look for validation, but we have to believe within. And so I'm so happy you have a therapist.
I was going to say, when you're not taught these things and you're taught the opposite, it is putting those people in your path, and you've built this community. I want to know what that has done for not only you, but the people in your community. When you do build this community, or you are a part of a community, what's the gift of that? What have you seen?
Oh, man. The mental health movement group has been one of the greatest things that I've ever put my heart into. I've had people go out of their way to message me saying that I saved their life. And I said, I'm not really sure that's true, but I'm glad. I've seen people who are in the darkest of dark times in their life that are now thriving parents that talk about their story. I've met so many incredible human beings through that group, and it all started with sharing my story on a random suicide prevention rocks page. And when that whole thing happened, they tried so hard to just erase me from their page, because their engagement was going to me, and that wasn't my intention behind it. But when I created the group, and that was when I could start sharing about my mom, before I started therapy, before I lost my friend, before I lost my brother. And when I started telling my story, other people started telling their story. And one of the greatest things that Facebook has done has created the anonymous button for those groups. So people that aren't comfortable sharing their story, share it through that way. And so many different things that I've put into that group. We did the battle buddy whenever the group first came out, and for those not familiar with what that is, basically in the military, they had one person that they would always count on in the trenches, and we implemented that in the group, and I paired group members up with each other. And some of those were really, really successful. Um, but I think the greatest thing that I've ever done was that group because it has created an entire family that I've been missing for my whole life.
Yeah, sometimes you can choose your family, which you can. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like, this is my family, it's blood. It's like, you know what? It's toxic. And it's not good for my mental health. And multiple times I've almost not been on this planet because of that. And so I'm so happy that you created your own. How many people are in this community now?
We are almost at 1,900 people.
Holy buckets. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then you created your podcast. Let's talk about that. What's your hope with that? What do you want to leave this planet with through the podcast?
So when I first created the podcast, I didn't really have much of a direction for it. It was, I'm going to get information off of the internet. I'm going to, read, we're going to do an episode on anxiety and, let's talk about anxiety and how it affects me and what you can do to better that. And I was like, okay, I need to do something different with it because it was an okay format, but I was like, I want to try and bring on some guests. I want to have that conversation with people that struggle telling their story. I want to stay true to the name of this podcast. I've had people come out on my podcast. I've had people tell their story about being SA'd. It's some really powerful and a lot of heavy conversations, but it's incredible to see how willing people are to tell their story when they're given that chance. And when Shelby had told me about your guys' podcast, I was just like, I did a little diving into what you guys bring to the table on your platform, and I've listened to a couple of your podcasts as well. And I was just like, you guys are so genuine. You guys put so much heart into every episode you have, and I can feel every ounce of it when you guys talk. And just hearing the words that you shared with me a few minutes ago, I just community and networking is just an incredibly powerful thing. And if there's one thing that I'm proud of, it's the fact that the podcast is in 24 different countries. And I've interviewed in almost every single one of those, I've almost interviewed somebody out of. Now, when I hit Denmark, I think Denmark was one of the craziest podcast places I've ever hit because I didn't think that she was going to, put me on the way that she did. And it got so many listeners and it got so many different engagement points, and it's just I gotta take a deep breath. It's a lot to take in. It's incredible. It's the impact I want to have is I want to be that person for everybody else that I didn't have growing up. And if I can do that, I will.
And you are.
I was going to say, and you are.
You are. It's not if, you are. And we're so honored to share your story today. And it's a heavy one, right? Like, you've been through a lot. And I just want to encourage you to know that we're here for you the way that you are for everybody else. Because I think sometimes when you're trying to build this thing, people are like, oh, Chris is good. Look at him. He's helping all these people and he's created this community. But we all need that support consistently and forever. And to be like, yeah, it looks like you have it all together, but how are you really doing? The way that you've been treated in your life is really unfair. And your story is so powerful, what so many people are going through, and you have no idea. You have no clue. So thank you for creating what you've created. There's more to our show we're going to get into, but I just especially love when men are vulnerable and share, because you're taught not to. Also, it's not even just like societal norms. It's like you were like legit told you should not be vulnerable. And so I'm so happy that you're going against that conditioning, because it's better for the world that you're talking about it. So,
yeah. So for people who want to tap into your community,
yes,
where can they find you and all of the things? Please plug everything.
So on Instagram, it's Mental Health Movement Pod. On Twitter, it's our X, whatever you want to call it. It's Beacon of Hope, MHM, which is the Mental Health Movement. Mental Health Movement on Facebook. and the podcast you can find anywhere on Spotify, iTunes, and any listening platforms that there is available.
Okay. And the podcast is Voice for the Voiceless.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And we'll, of course, plug everything in the show notes. But thank you. I'm excited for everyone to take a look and, know that it's a community that they're welcome in, no matter what state they're in. And if they need a little hope, a little inspiration, that is one click away.
And sometimes too, the in is like, I'm going to hear people's stories and help them before I share mine. It's almost like reciprocity. Like some people want to be the helper before they're helped. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a Facebook group is nice for that, right? You can give people encouragement and then, get warmed up to it and then maybe share your story when you're ready. Because sometimes people, it's tough for people to do that, to be vulnerable.
I think the most challenging thing also is, when people are sharing with you, I feel like so many people are so quick to like, oh yeah, I went through this situation too. And while it's good to, relate, sometimes it's not always necessary in every situation when they're sharing with you. Like not everybody wants advice or somebody to relate to. They just want somebody to listen to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really hard for many to do. But, like I said earlier, the most important and powerful thing we can do is listen to one another.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's such a good point too, because you want to relate. You want to be like, oh yeah,
or give advice or do, and it's like, just be there for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that battle buddy too. That's a really cool idea of pairing people up. More like accountability too. If you're really struggling, like I'm your person, you're supposed to tell me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right, awesome, Chris. Well, as you know, we always end our show with 3 segments. One is 3 gold stars. So if you could share 3 pieces of advice for people, what would you share?
Be gentle with yourself. That's one really powerful thing my therapist gave to me that I hold every single day, that I end all of my podcasts with, is being gentle with yourself. As humans, we're our own biggest critics, right? We're our own worst enemy. And I think, when you can be gentle with yourself and give yourself grace, I think you're going to start every single day off the right way. It's hard to not have a bad day sometimes. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but you've got to remind ourselves that we're only human. Mm-hmm. Second piece of advice: progress, not perfection. Baby steps are still steps. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you didn't get a promotion that day. What matters is you have that job and you're taking the steps to get that promotion. And the last piece of advice is treat others how you want to be treated. That's something I've carried with me since elementary school. I don't agree with looking down on a janitor. I don't agree with looking down on homeless people. They're in their situation because they had a hardship in their life that they're not sure how to get past. So treat others how you want to be treated.
I love those. Mm-hmm. Simple, but powerful. Mm-hmm. And also just principles to live by. No matter who you are. I love that. Okay, so our next segment is Unleashing Ivy. Just some more questions that we're curious about. Do you have your question?
My mind is going to so many directions right now.
All right, my question is regarding practices that you currently have. Therapy, journaling. What's something that may surprise people that has really made a difference for your mental health?
Sunsets.
Oh!
Believe it or not.
You're in the right spot. Chris is in Florida.
Yeah, easy for you to say, Chris.
I am super obsessed with finding the perfect sunset. I have knocked off something off my bucket list recently, actually. Got to watch a sunset on the plane to Indianapolis. That was one of the coolest sunsets I've ever seen. And sunsets for me, it's like a warm hug. If I'm ever feeling not myself, it's like, oh, okay, do I have time to go see a sunset? And I will every single time. Really big fan of sunsets.
Love that.
It's going to be a good date someday for you.
Yeah.
Take a ride to a sunset.
Yeah. Chris is single, ready to mingle. All right, Chris, I'm thinking in the future. It sounds like, you want to be with someone, potentially create a family. I'm curious for you, when you think of that, knowing, what you went through as a kid, what you kind of want, like some of your main principles or ideas to be in the home that you are going to create.
Communication, number one. We're in a world where everybody talks, but nobody communicates. We don't communicate to understand. We don't communicate to talk about our problems. We're all so quick to move on to the next thing, right? And somebody who has dated a couple times, I haven't really dated a ton of my life. I've never been in a relationship, believe it or not. I've been stood up. I've been ghosted for no reason. And, that's one thing I want if I were to ever be in a relationship. That's the goal. It's the hope. Is communication and trust. I feel everything to the 10th degree, and it's something I wish I could turn off within myself, but it's a habit because of, like I said, what I've went through. But communication is my number one biggest thing. Like, if you can't communicate what you're going through, maybe you shouldn't be in a relationship with somebody.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you are a catch, and you are going to be in a relationship, and they're going to be so lucky because for some reason you have not lost your tender heart, right? Like, you could have easily had a hardened heart. You could be full of hate and anger and resentment, and you're doing everything you can to help and to do the therapy that you know that you need from what's happened to you. And so you are a catch, and that's amazing. Like, whoever is going to be with you in the future is so lucky. It's amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you could go back and tell younger Chris one thing, what age would you choose and what would you tell him?
Oh, man. I would probably go back to 14-year-old Chris. Chris, who probably felt the lowest Chris has ever felt. Because, again, it wasn't until recently I understood why that first attempt even happened. It would probably give him a hug and tell him that I see you. You're worthy of all good things, and all of what's going on in your life right now is not your fault.
Beautiful. I think too, sometimes it's hard when you're 14 because you still have another 4 years before you're like out of the house, and it feels like it's never going to come. But, if there were any teenagers listening, or, a message to them is that, like, eventually you will have your freedom. Yeah. And you will be able to make money. And because I think that's part of it too, is you feel so trapped. Like, you can't afford your own home. And I think 14 and 15 is a really tough age. Like, it's just hard because you still have some years, but you're mature beyond, like,
you understand things.
Yes.
But at the same time you don't.
Right.
Because you're still living and learning. Yeah.
And the worst part of 15 was going to 3 different high schools in 1 year. Oh, that was really hard.
Man, you've been through a lot, Chris.
Yeah. Keep taking good care of yourself.
Yes.
We need you here.
Do my best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much for your time. This was awesome to hear your story, and I can't believe what you're doing in the world. It's so cool. It's amazing.
Thank you
both. Now we're friends, and we can
even better.
We can go through this together and keep learning lessons. Mental health is just like this endless journey of taking care of yourself, like you said, being gentle with yourself. I'm so happy that you shared that because I need to hear that all the time too.
Yeah. And I feel like we can never have enough good people on our team, just in this community, and the more the merrier. So whoever is listening and needs a community, we're all here. Like, I hope that is the big takeaway from this message, is that no matter what you've gone through, the darkest lows, like, you're still here, and there's hope, and there's a community that is ready to welcome you with open arms.
And lastly, Chris, piece of gold, a quote that speaks to you. Please send us off.
Quote that stands out. You know what? It's a quote that somebody gave to me recently, and it's a quote that I think should always be shared. It's by Henry Ford. Whether you can or can't, you're always right. And, a lot of people don't know how to interpret that all the time. And again, we're always in our heads. What we tell ourselves is going to manifest and become that reality if you tell yourselves enough time. So positive affirmations, looking yourself in the mirror, saying that you're enough and I love you. Those 3 words, I love you, is the hardest thing I've ever had to tell myself, because I could never look myself in the eyes and say that. And because of all that hurt, just hearing those words were always used as a weapon to me. And those positive affirmations, you start believing it, you start believing it. And again, whether you can or can't, you're right.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold. We want to thank you and encourage you to celebrate yourself for taking the time to learn and get inspired in your one beautiful life. And if this podcast means something to you, it would mean so much to us if you'd be willing to take 30 seconds to help support our mission to keep bringing you inspiring stories and guests.
First, following the podcast is important because it helps you never miss an episode. To do this, just go to the Ivy Unleashed podcast show page on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow.
While you're there, if you'd be so kind to give us a 5-star rating and review and share your favorite episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful for your support.
We are thrilled you're here and are so happy that you're taking time to prioritize your wellness, self-discovery, and growth with us. Additionally, we want to remind you that this podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are not licensed therapists, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals.